Hello and welcome. I'm Jono Hayes and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Putin, Xi and Kim take centre stage in China as world leaders meet for high-level talks. Belgium will recognise a Palestinian state at the United Nations, ramping up global pressure on Israel amid the Gaza crisis. And Afghanistan is rocked by a second earthquake as the Taliban now appeal for international aid. To our first story, Vladimir Putin is at the centre of attention in China this week, meeting Xi Jinping and other world leaders at the Shanghai Cooperation Summit. Tomorrow, he'll join Xi and North Korea's Kim Jong-un at a massive military parade in Tiananmen Square. The visit highlights deepening ties between Moscow, Beijing and Pyongyang, and it comes as Russia deploys forces in Ukraine, signalling a potential autumn offensive. Now to discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined in the studio by Arabiya senior presenter Rawia, Alami, and also deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddy, who is live with us from London. Both of you, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, Rawia, let's turn to you on this. Putin and Xi, now apparently that's today's biggest, best friendship that we're seeing emerge. He referred to him as a dear friend and seen that there are unprecedented level of ties right now. How much of this do you think is symbolism? How much of it is actually substance that's going on here?
I think it's a mix of both, a bit of symbolism and a bit of substance. Now, on the symbolic side, Putin calling the Chinese president as his dear friend, I think, is meant to show a united front with China, especially when the two leaders and their countries are facing a lot of pressure from the West, namely from the US. Russia is facing it over Ukraine, and China is facing it over trade and security concerns. On the substantive side, it is basically substantive on many different levels. Let's start with the economic level. Economic ties are deepening between the two countries. There's a lot of coordination. Basically, China has become Russia's main energy buyer, and that this is very significant for the Russians because it gives them a chance to offset the effects of the Western sanctions. And Russia also hopes that China or exports, energy exports to China and to other countries through China are going to basically compensate for all their losses because of the Western sanctions. On the military level, also militarily, the ties are deepening. There's a lot of coordination, military exercises and military consultations. And also on the political level, they are all aligned, pushing against a US-backed alliance.
Yeah, it does feel like this. It feels like this is very much us against the US is what we're kind of seeing right now. Freddie, let's turn to you on this. China is saying they're now going to offer visa-free travel to Russians, but how significant do you think that is in showing just how close these parties are now becoming?
That is quite a significant step, and it's quite an interesting one, the visa move. However, when we talk about Russia and China coming close together, it is worth remembering that Russia's been talking about this for a very long time. I mean, in 1996, Yeltsin went to Beijing. They had a kind of conference where they agreed that the age of American supremacy needed to end and that they needed to be closer allies and so on. So it's very much been pre-Putin. It's been Russia's sort of foreign policy objective to form this alternative alliance against America. And it always falls down on the fact that America is still, despite not being the unipolar power, it is still the supreme economic, financial, and military power. However, 20 years, 30 years of talking about growing closer together is bearing fruit, and the visa scheme is part of that. And these are not countries that historically, China and Russia have had awkward relationship historically, if you go back over the centuries. So it is a change. It's a significant change, but we should remember that, as you've already said, it's symbolic to a large extent too.
Well, earlier on this, I spoke as well to Derek Grossman. He's the professor even of international relations at the University of Southern California. We were talking about this, and I asked him specifically about those tensions between China, India, and the US. Let's have a listen to this.
The Trump administration has bitten off more than it can chew with India. First, it started with 25% reciprocal tariffs, and then reportedly, because of the Trump administration's displeasure with India's relationship with India and importing discounted barrels of Russian oil, they slapped another 25% on. So now we're at 50%. But I mean, to your point, could there be a quick turnaround? Could there be a quick deal, right? I think Trump certainly thinks so because he has a very good relationship with Modi, or at least did up until recently. But that remains to be seen. And I think, if you talk to Indian interlocutors, which I do all the time, or, senior Indian government officials, they will tell you that a lot of damage has been done in terms of their trust of the United States. Now that trust is turned into distrust. And that is going to take a long time to repair. I don't think it's like a light switch that could be turned on and off. We're hearing reports that Trump has tried to call Modi on 4 separate occasions, and Modi has declined. And now Trump is not going to attend the Quad Summit to be held in New Delhi later this month, right? So things are really unraveling quickly. That's not to say that India is going to have a better relationship with China than it does with the United States simply because of the last few days. I don't think that's the case either. But I do think that the United States under the Trump administration isn't doing itself any favors in terms of keeping India closer in order to implement its Indo-Pacific strategy of countering China.
Rawia, we had there as well that India and the US, somewhat frosty, the relationship at the moment, it seems, between the two of those.
Yeah.
They seem to not be engaging with each other. That friendship doesn't seem to be working right now, right?
No, it doesn't. But that's the thing. I mean, in politics, there is no permanent friend and there is no permanent enemy. And let's go back to, for example, China and Russia. I agree with Freddy that their relationship has passed through some challenging times, and it was a complicated relationship. Yet, in this instance, in this moment in history, the friendship is real, even though it's calculated. And by the way, China has the upper hand in it for many reasons. Russia needs China in this friendship a lot more than China needs Russia. Therefore, it is calculated. But I mean, all of these circumstances, political circumstances, they change. Friendship change into
absolutely.
Other
Freddy,
forms of relationships.
Freddie, to turn to you on this, should the West be worried of something like this? There's obviously this hard power effort, as you mentioned a while ago. Is the West now kind of going, oof, this might not be the best thing for us?
Well, I think that a lot of Western statesmen outside of the Trump orbit are extremely concerned about the apparent capriciousness of Trump's tariffs, that they can be turned on and off. And that this means that the BRICS, the sort of rival emerging economic bloc to America, to Western dominance, are coming closer together because they feel they can't rely on America, they can't rely on the West. And I think this is a legitimate source of concern. But the thing about capriciousness is that it is capricious, so it can be turned off very easily. And Trump is very good when he wants to at turning the charm offensive back on. And Modi may not like it for now, but I feel that Trump could easily win that round. I mean, it wasn't so long ago, before this tariff bust-up, that J.D. Vance was in India with his Indian wife, having a very good time and talking a lot about Indian-American cooperation. So I feel that spigot of friendship can be turned back on pretty quickly if Trump wants to.
Rawia, what next from the SCO? It's been a week. We've had the Modi situation yesterday with Putin and Modi sharing a motorcade. Now today we've got Putin and Xi. Tomorrow we know that all three, including Kim Jong-un, are going to be present on one stage. Do you think that's the next step in this friendship?
I think it could be, at least optically, the scene tomorrow with the three leaders together attending this parade, which is, by the way, China's largest ever military parade. to mark the 80th anniversary of the formal surrender of the Japanese after the end of the Second World War. The scene, I think, is going to represent that unity, that signal of unity that I was talking about. We're talking about now not just China and Russia, North Korea as well. They are all countries increasingly positioned against the West. Now, for Putin, standing beside Kim gives the image of a growing U.S. anti-U.S. bloc with the three countries. For Kim, it boosts his international stature. It also shows that he's not isolated. He is welcomed on at least one world stage. And we have to notice one thing as well, that this is the first multilateral international meeting for the North Korean leader. The last time that any North Korean leader attended a Chinese parade like this one was his grandfather in 1959.
So this is huge.
It is huge for Kim, I think.
Well, more on the SCO tomorrow, I'm sure, as the SCO continues. I'm sure we'll have more details on what tomorrow shall bring. Let's move on to our next story now. And Belgium is set to recognise a Palestinian state at the United Nations later this month, stepping up international pressure on Israel amid the continuing devastation in Gaza. Foreign Minister Maxime Provost has called the move a response to what he described as Israel's violation of international law and the humanitarian tragedy which is unfolding. Rawia, we'll turn to you first of all on this. Belgium saying it is now going to recognise a Palestinian state, the latest country to do that. The UN is where this will all take place, and we know when that happens in September, there will be quite a few countries who will be doing the same. How big of a deal is this diplomatically speaking?
Well, it's a strong political message, I think, yet it has symbolic weight, if you want. Now, it will not have immediate practical impact on the ground, especially with the current Israeli government. Yet, on the other hand, I think it signals European support for Palestinian statehood. It gives the Palestinian statehood legitimacy. And I think it opens the door for more European countries and other Western countries to support Palestinian statehood. If you want, it could start a domino effect that we might not see the effect of it now, but it's building solidarity, building support for a Palestinian state, I think, for the future.
Now, we know that, and we've said this before, many countries have joined in, but without the EU actually backing this and being on board.
Actually, 143 countries out of the 193 countries that are members of the UN General Assembly have already recognized the state of Palestine.
But if the EU as a whole does not get behind it, it does kind of fall down a bit, which is where Hungary a lot of the time will interject and say, and also Germany as well, will say
definitely
we're not getting
a united European stand would be, a united European recognition of a Palestinian state actually would be a lot more effective than individual states, even big states like France, also Spain already did. France intends to, will not be as effective.
But without the might of the US as well, it feels like this is largely symbolic, I guess. Freddy, let's turn to you on this. Recognition of the Israel state. Critics are saying that this actually rewards Hamas. Is that fair, do you think, or is it actually going to put pressure on Netanyahu and the Israeli government?
I think the rewards Hamas argument has become a bit of a sort of knee-jerk response from Israel and people who support Israel. And it's not without some logic, it's not without some merit, but it was worth saying in the Belgium example, I think they are making it contingent on Hamas releasing the hostages. They're making their recognition of Palestine contingent on Hamas releasing the hostages and giving up control of Gaza. And so the rewarding Hamas argument in that case doesn't quite work. The more kind of cynical take is to say, who cares about Belgium? I think that's a little bit unfair. It's just one other country adding to this sort of growing chorus of international condemnation. But as you quite rightly say, Jono, the key player here is America. There's going to be, in New York, there's going to be this UN General Assembly in late September. And the big question is, what will Donald Trump do? And I think the answer is he's very unlikely to move the needle against Israel in any significant way.
Rawia, when we spoke about this earlier on the show, there was mention that the Palestinian state would require 4 things in order to be recognised officially as a Palestinian state. Those would be a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. And currently, Palestine has none of those. Largely in part to the fact that the war...
People.
It has, but they are being displaced.
Population.
It is not their fault that they are being displaced. So it is the fault of Israel that the Palestinian state, in official terms, cannot exist.
Yeah, and not just that. I mean, the second condition you talked about, to have a continuous defined border and connected land. And that's exactly what the Israelis are trying to do to combat this movement, as Freddy called it, this international condemnation and moving towards recognizing a Palestinian state. They're trying to face that with growing or building more Israeli settlements like the E1 block that they announced recently. And that will guarantee that there won't be continuity of land for a Palestinian state to be viable over it.
Is that, in terms of strategy, is that again Israel trying to play into the strategy to make sure that, well, officially, yes, as many countries as would like to recognize the Palestinian state can do that, but in terms of on paper, it's not possible because we will continue to push the narrative that you don't have these 4 different things.
Absolutely. I mean, and if, as Israel and Smotrich and even Netanyahu have been threatening and actually voicing their intention out loud, the intention of the government to annex parts of the West Bank or even all of it. I mean, that's what they're doing, basically, creating facts on the ground, regardless of international law, regardless of what the position of other states are, especially even powerful states, let's say European states, as we have seen.
Yep.
Creating those facts on the ground, as long as there's American backing, and therefore, do whatever you want with international law. Do whatever you want with all of these recognitions.
Freddie, let's take you back for 1 second as we're speaking about the US and how important a player they are in this. What's the feeling with Republicans in the US, from your experience at least? What's the narrative that's happening there at the moment?
Well, I think polling suggests that Republican support for Israel is still pretty strong, although there has been a dip among Republicans, independents and Democrats in support for Israel. I think in the Trump White House, it's the commitment to Israel and the sort of general contempt for what they would regard as sort of international virtue signaling in favor of Palestine is pretty strong. However, set against that is a growing distrust and dislike among key figures in the Trump cabinet towards Benjamin Netanyahu, a feeling that he's an unreliable partner, that the Israeli government took America for a ride somewhat, particularly with the Iran strikes, and a general sort of suspicion towards him. Whether that translates into anything meaningful from the Trump White House against Israel on the Palestine question is another matter entirely. But there are doubts about Netanyahu, but I think when it comes to Team Trump and Israel, it's a fairly reliable alliance. It's a fairly durable alliance, I think.
Rawia, last word from you on this before we move on. When the United Nations meet at the end of September and everyone shows their cards and says, right, here's who's supporting the Palestinian state, do you think that's the time when Netanyahu will feel the pressure of the world saying, enough is enough, we want you to move out?
I wish I can say yes, but I don't think so.
You think we'll still continue on past the General Assembly and it will be no further towards a ceasefire or some sort of...
Unless there is real American pressure. And even though, I mean, as Freddy said, the ties between the US and Israel are very, very strong, regardless of Netanyahu, regardless of frustrations by Trump or the Trump administration with Netanyahu's policies. The tie remains strong, even though Trump has recognized and noticed that the influence of the Jewish lobby inside the Congress, and that's what he said in one of his interviews recently, that it has become, they used to basically rule over, control the Congress, he said, but they don't anymore, and he's surprised to see this. He does recognize that the actions of Israel have made them lose the public relations war. That's how he actually termed it, even though they might and probably did, will win the war militarily.
Rawia, Freddy, thank you for your thoughts on that. Stay right there. Let's move on To our next story, the Taliban have appealed for international assistance after eastern Afghanistan was shaken again, this time by a fresh 5.2 magnitude earthquake, adding to the devastation from the powerful 6.0 magnitude quake that happened over the weekend and now has killed at least 1,400 people. The new tremor struck near the epicenter of Sunday's quake, hitting remote mountainous provinces close to the Pakistan border, which has further complicated the rescue efforts which are ongoing in a region that is already struggling with landslides and very, very heavy rain. Rawia, 1,400 people, I think that's a low estimation for how many we'll actually see as the death toll in Afghanistan as a result of not just the first but also the subsequent 5.2 quake that we saw today as well.
Absolutely right. I mean, the death toll is definitely going to rise. The Afghani authorities have already said that there's no way they can predict or estimate how many bodies or people are still trapped under the rubble. We are talking about more than 5,000 homes have been destroyed. Several remote villages in remote areas have been completely destroyed. And also it's very difficult for rescue teams to reach all the remote areas. We're talking about a very, very difficult terrain, very difficult land, damaged infrastructure. The roads are blocked because of landslides and heavy rain. So therefore, it's very hard to actually foresee the end death toll for this disaster.
It does seem like it's going to be a lot higher. I think 1,400 is a very low estimation at this stage.
And then the aid. I mean, they need so many people who have been rescued can possibly die if aid doesn't reach and medical supplies.
And we're hearing of 2 helicopters, and that's all that the Taliban have at their disposal currently in order to get to people in those very, very remote areas. And I guess the big thing will be international aid. And Freddy, to you on this one, the Taliban, as we mentioned, calling for foreign help here. Many countries cut the aid over women's rights and several other reasons as well. Aid and politics, should they be separated when a crisis like this occurs?
Yes, of course they should be. We should try and get our kind of urge to lecture the Taliban about human rights and so on. We should try and put that aside if there are people who desperately need help. However, it's easier said than done to separate aid and politics, and that applies to the Taliban as well, who in the past have been very suspicious of Western aid because they regard it as sort of brainwashing or corrupting to the governance and the way of life they want to impose on Afghanistan. The question here becomes for Western countries looking to help. I think the UK has committed $1 million, which doesn't sound like very much in the grand scheme of international affairs, but I think it is on top of regular contributions from Foreign Office and from aid groups in Britain. I think it's about 100 million a year we give to Afghanistan still. But there has been a bit of concern about where does this money go? I mean, you can give it to the UN Population Fund, you can give it to the International Red Cross, and they will try and do the best they can. But it's a corrupt government in Afghanistan, I think that's fair to say. Do we think that the aid money, resources, will always go to the people who need them the most? The great concern is that they do not.
I'm going to give you a quick breakdown on that. And as you said, Freddie, correctly so, 1 million has been pledged by the UK government. But taking it back to 2004, the Indian tsunami, 75 million British pounds at that stage, plus almost 400 million in public funding as well. The Kashmir earthquake of 2005, 100 million, right through to Haiti, which was over 200 million in total. Turkey, Syria, the earthquake there was 5 million plus 150 million in public funds as well. So this really pales in comparison. And although a corrupt government, Rawia, the people are the ones who are suffering, not the government here.
Absolutely. I mean, 1 million from the UK, I think, is embarrassingly low. But that's just my humble opinion. But I mean, let's break down. I agree completely with Freddie that aid and politics, and you probably have the same opinion, should be completely separated. At least because, I mean, a lot of these Western countries have withheld and withdrew their aid to Afghanistan, citing human rights issues and women's issues and all of that. Okay, so at the end of the day, you are doing this to protect the Afghani citizens and the Afghani women and their rights and all of that. Aren't you infringing their rights or on their rights by not giving them the most basic human rights, which is at least aid at the time of natural crisis.
Well, I don't know if now is the time to try and impose that upon Afghanistan when this is what's going on.
Definitely not. And also, I have another point about also Freddy's point that he said that it is a corrupt government. Everybody knows that. The money, we don't know where the money goes, yet there are so many other ways to give aid. Let me just give examples. For example, China, Iran, Pakistan, and the United Arab Emirates have offered support, including medical supplies, rescue teams, food. India has also sent 1,000 tents and 15 tons of food. So there are other ways to help, not just to give money where, and it could be channeled to other channels that that are unacceptable. Having said that, we're talking about a country that is in drought. They have a humanitarian crisis. They have a nutrition crisis. The foreign aid to Afghanistan have gone down in the past 3 years, since 2022, by 80%. And do you know what they most need right now? Body bags for the victims. Who are being dug up from under the rubble. And basic supplies, just hygiene.
Hygiene, medical supplies, that. And I guess from a financial point of view, Freddie, Rachel Reeves will be looking and saying she can't make the books balance here with sending $1 million is maybe even too much for the UK right now.
Well, yes, and I mean, particularly when you consider that that million is on top of the 113 million I think we sent last year. We'll probably send something similar this year. We still continue to make quite significant aid spending abroad, and there are reasons to do that beyond just humanitarian reasons. There are thought to be good reasons for doing that, but it's very difficult for a government that is actually having to face a really severe an increasingly severe economic crisis in Britain. If you look at the bond markets today, pretty terrifying stuff for British politicians looking at that. It's difficult for a Labour government in that position to say, oh, we're going to carry on sending masses of money out, even though, of course, it is the right thing to do when there's a disaster. But they need to justify it. They need to make sure that money is going to the right place, is actually helping people when the British economy is in peril at the moment.
Freddy, Rawia, thank you both for your thoughts on that. Let's move on to our next story, this time for something much lighter. Meal deliveries by drone are taking off, that's quite literally, around some of the most remote islands in Scandinavia. Residents on almost 700,000 islands in Sweden, Norway and Finland could soon have access to hot food deliveries straight to the door, thanks to a Norwegian startup. The company, called Aviant, will start working on the Swedish island of Värmdö, 8 miles outside of Stockholm. That's before it branches out into other areas in the region. Rawia, this is now how we're going to have delivery, especially in remote areas like this. Swedish burgers straight to the island, right to your door. Is this the future of food delivery?
Looks like it. At least this is a taste of the future of delivery. But I think there are hurdles, at least, and challenges, at least at this stage. First of all, the drones cannot carry heavy weight. So we're talking about less meals that they can deliver.
Yeah.
Each drone can deliver. So they need more drones to reach the same area that maybe 1 or 2 delivery drivers can. Also, their range is limited as well, which means possibly also more drones that need to be used. There are also rules around flying over private residence, private areas also that needs to be addressed. And also there are safety concerns. I mean, we're talking about meals that are hot, could be liquid, they could drop on someone's head.
Could be soup.
Could be soup, gravy.
So your concern is down the safety route. Freddy, as a takeout delivery aficionado, would you trust your burger by delivery from a drone instead of a driver?
Absolutely. I've got nothing against drivers, but I think I'd trust a drone even more than a driver. It's not very decent of me and pretty decadent, but when I read about this story, I thought of the Isle of Wight, which is a place I go to quite a lot in Britain. It's off the south coast of England. It's about a 10-minute boat journey from the mainland to the Isle of Wight. And reading about this company, which is aiming to provide to remote islands in Scandinavia, I thought how brilliant it would be if I could order a delicious takeaway from Portsmouth on the mainland of England to the Isle of Wight, and it could just zoom across the sea to me. It's quite a dreamy idea. I'm afraid I am quite tempted by it. I'm quite pro-drone on this score.
But as long as it's not flying from France to deliver your burger.
But that is a possibility. I mean, you want some of the best food in the world, you want it in record time, you could have it done by drone. Rawia, there's the human element of this that we seem to have glossed over as well, and we mentioned that it can do the job of a driver, but effectively this is technology putting somebody out of a job.
Absolutely, and this is just another example of how technology is going to take over people's jobs, and there are so many jobs that are going to be extinct in the future. Maybe, yes, delivery driver is going to be one of them. Actually, if I remember correctly, I read a book called 21st Lessons for the 21st Century, and it was published a few years ago, even before this sort of AI revolution sort of started spreading everywhere. And the author was predicting that this is going to be the case, and that the problem is going to be that the technology is going to develop so fast, take over people's jobs so fast, much faster than our ability to retrain or train people for jobs that are going to be open in the future.
Freddy, what would you pay a premium? Because considering that it's going to be the cost of a drone to set it up, you're talking about the runtime of the drone. This is going to be quite expensive tech when it kicks off initially, because even your bog standard small drone is in excess of $200 to $300. Would you pay a premium to have this food delivered to your chateau on the Isle of Wight?
I want to facetiously say yes, but no, I'm not only decadent, I'm also extremely tight-fisted. So I'd probably wait for the market to drive the price down before I did it myself.
Not a premium.
Not paying a premium. Wants the burger, wants it now, doesn't want to pay a premium. Thank you so much, both of you, for that. It's that time of the show where Rawia and also Freddy have brought us two of the quirkier stories from the news of the day. Rawia, first of all, to you and to cruise passengers who now have discovered that all is not exactly what it was cracked up to be.
Absolutely. The story is about a Carnival cruise passenger who, makes his way into his room on this cruise ship. Just like all of us when we go into, hotels that leave us this beautiful sort of animal-shaped, bird-shaped towels on the bed.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And we admire them so much. We take pictures, So he was admiring that, and after that he was like unpacking, and he wanted to find storage space for his suitcase. He looked under the bed, only to find a bag full of these
pre-made
towels in different shapes.
It's all an illusion.
It's all an illusion. Actually, it was really funny because his reaction was that, I wasn't surprised, but it was like knowing that Santa wasn't real.
Yeah, which of course he is real, and that we'd hate to be disappointing anyone. But I do think if you have a look at this here, people normally are set up to believe that this has done a personal touch. I always think that this is when you walk in, they've taken something about you that they've discovered upon your check-in, upon your stay, and they've kind of implemented that to put it on your bed so that you walk in and you get surprised by it.
You feel it's personal. Especially, yes, if you're a honeymooner, you would think, oh, it was especially made for me.
Yeah.
If it's a family, then it's specially made for the kids. But the funny thing is that passenger did something. The next morning, he displayed all of these shapes, all of these towels in the different shapes, the ones he found under the bed, for the room service for the cleaners staff to see, with a note saying, "I know what you're up to."
Well, it's
what you've been up to.
Knowing your secret, it's devastating news. I really thought that was done with such a personal touch every time. I'll never believe anything I see in a hotel again, I think. Freddie, moving on to your story. President Trump had teased us with a huge announcement today, and I think we all had been on tenterhooks, only for it to be revealed and to be far less exciting than we expected. Tell us more.
Well, it was quite a lot of excitement on social media in America last night and in Washington circles, because the White House put out a statement with the usual sort of schedule for the day, and it said at 2:00 the president will make a statement, and it didn't say anything about it. And there have been all these wild theories going around about Donald Trump's health in recent days. It seems it's mostly quite spurious stuff, but there's a lot of theories that he's about to have a serious operation, that there's something really wrong with him. Some people even suggesting he might be about to resign. And so the internet kind of went wild with what he might possibly announce. But of course, Trump being Trump, it was merely to hype the announcement of something very Trumpy, which is that he wants to move Space Force, which is the space command that he set up in his first term. He wants to move the headquarters from Colorado to Alabama. And he wanted to do this in his first term for, among other reasons, the fact that Alabama is a very strong pro-Trump Republican voting state and Colorado is not. Joe Biden, when he was president, for exactly the same reason, stopped that move from happening. But now it seems he's just announced it's going ahead, and Space Force will be headquartered in Alabama. Rocket City will be in Alabama. And given that Alabama doesn't have a reputation or much of an economy in terms of tech and high-tech productions, it's probably pretty good news for Alabama.
Now,
for them.
you do have to wonder, because it's been 6 days, which, by the way, the longest stint since Donald Trump has taken office. 6 days between him making any sort of announcement, and taking aside that Labour Day was over the weekend and he may have had a couple of days out to play some golf and he's been recuperating. To tease us with an announcement and then for it to be something so lackluster is very in keeping with this administration and how they like to play ball, right?
Well, exactly. And I mean, it's also a reminder that certainly the first 6 months of this Trump presidency was so breakneck, and you had this 78, 79-year-old man, doing stuff that most mortals would find very, very difficult, and it was kind of impossible for journalists to keep up with everything that was going on. And I would say in the last couple of months things have slowed down a little bit, and that's why people have started to question his health, and there have been these photographs of his bruised hands and his swollen ankles and so on. And of course, there's a lot of Democrats who are very angry about the way that Republicans took a lot of joy in Joe Biden's very obvious physical and mental decline. So there's a bit of revenge going on there in the Trump news.
Did you buy into any of it, Rawia, when you saw online all this speculation about President Trump's hands, keeping in mind that he's 79 years old? When you hit that age in life, you just bruise automatically. You look at something sideways and you bruise.
It did cross my mind, because there was a lot of say on a lot of videos, a lot of social media posts that predict that something is going to happen to Trump, and they were giving dates, and all of that. So I mean, it crossed my mind, but then I thought, I doubt it.
It just seems, again,
I doubt it.
It's looking for a headline that may or may not be there. And I don't think with Donald Trump, you don't have to wait very long. He'll make the headlines.
Not just that. I mean, he is an old man. He's a 79-year-old man, yet he seems to be immortal.
Well, in saying that, something like a bruise in his hand, hardly a cause for concern. The concealer that was on there as well. My parents are in their 70s. That just tends to be something.
Yes, it's part of old age.
Yeah, it just seems to be something that happens. But Freddie, the media love any excuse to jump on a Trump story, and certainly something if they can take what may look like a positive on the front and then turn it into a negative, they just seem to love a bit of that.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's not that Donald Trump makes the news. To a large extent, he is the news now. And probably while we're talking, he said something completely outrageous that's going to be a national story tomorrow, international story tomorrow.
I can't find it, but he just announced, as we correctly predicted, that it was the move to Huntsville, Alabama. And aside from that, no mention of anything else. So the Epstein files, the LA continuation of that from a couple of months ago, none of that has been referenced. So
what an anticlimax.
Tomorrow is...
Give him a moment.
Tomorrow's another day for that. Well, that's all from us on W News Extra for this evening. I want to say a huge thank you to our guest, Arabiya's senior presenter, Rawia Alami, in the studio, and of course, deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddy Gray, in London. As always, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on X. And G&T with Tom Burgess Watson is on the way next. Thank you and goodbye.